I was recently asked about the mistakes that beginning guitar players make. And although there is a list of things that I could bring up, I'm going to keep it fairly limited and base it around these main topics or points that I found to repeat throughout large age ranges and from my experience of teaching multiple years. These are issues that continue to come up, and some of it is technical, but some of it goes beyond the technique portion into attitude and, well, I'll discuss it in a minute. But before we go there, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and don't forget to leave a comment below to let me know what topics or questions that you may have that you would like for me to address in an upcoming video. All right, so let's get into the mistakes that I find. The first I'm going to talk about is technique. And overall, the posture and technique that many students have in the beginning, they don't know how to hold the guitar. They don't know the correct thing to do. So they're more inclined to make the mistake on the way they sit or the way they hold the guitar. One of the common ones that I see is really a laziness type of thing, because even when they know about this, they still do it. It's when you show them how to properly hold the guitar and then they want to lean it back so it's on its back, and then they reach their hand across the fretboard and they start to notice that their wrist hurt. Well, obviously your wrist is going to hurt, right? And if you're a teacher, you've probably seen this many times. And some of us who play and been playing for years, we still may do it because we get a little lazy from time to time. But this is something that you have to be careful of and address, because when they reach over and the wrist starts hurting, continued approach of doing this, of course, is going to have a lasting effect if you're not careful. So if you're a teacher, you've seen this. If you're someone that's not taking lessons or you're just starting and you're doing this, stop doing that and sit up and hold it properly. That way you can continue to play it for multiple years. Continuing with technique, another one is when students will go to play a chord or something, that they want to reach for, and the fretboard being aligned through here, and they want to turn their elbow all the way in, and it's almost like their forearm is parallel with the fretboard. And of course, that's going to be an issue too, right? And then they're going to have that same kind of pain and wonder, why does it hurt when I play? So these sound like simple things, but if you're not careful and you're doing it, you may not even know that you're doing it. So if you are doing this, stop doing this. That way you don't have to worry about any kind of physical pain in the wrist and the hand, because that's not something that you want to have in the long run, because not only can it stop you from playing guitar in the long run, stop you from playing another instrument, it could also have an effect on your everyday life, and it could even lead to something where you have to go to the doctor and potentially have surgery. You don't want to do that. So just go ahead and hold the guitar correctly. And if you're not already doing that or you don't know how, then I would highly suggest it. You look up some videos on the proper way to hold the guitar here on YouTube. Or, and I would probably say this is the better option to have someone sitting right across from you, is to go to someone that knows how to play, knows the correct posture, and either take some lessons or at least get someone to help you. The second mistake that I see are students that are wanting to pursue so many different topics at the same time. That's great that when you start to play guitar and you're interested in many different styles or different techniques and you want to try all these things, that's awesome, that's great. But if you're trying to pursue them all at the same time, you get nowhere. You have to actually take some dedicated time to learn and understand a particular thing. Otherwise, you're just kind of dabbling here and there, and you're not really going to be making any sort of progress. So taking on too many topics, in the long run, make a list. You can go back to these things. You can address these things as you go, but back away from that. Focus on one, two things maybe. And if you want to continue to look up all these instructional things on YouTube, be very careful, because you could see the next flashy thing that gets your attention, and then boom, you've lost that attention again, and then you have this context shifting and you're not really absorbing the material, you can't learn it. And then eventually what I've seen is that people doing this approach will get frustrated because they're not learning, they don't understand why they're not learning, and then they end up quitting. So don't make that mistake. The next mistake that is very common and is kind of related to the previous is not listening and working on the things that your teacher gives you. So if you are taking lessons, either you are paying for it or a parent, somebody is paying for you to take lessons. And when you come in, the instructor is there to help you. If it's a good instructor, I know that there's some out there that may not be the best. But for myself, I can speak, my experience. When a student comes in, I want them to progress. I want them to not have to go through the same mistakes that I went through, having a very independent, self-taught approach in the beginning, which self-teaching is something that I'll talk about in a future video. But having no teacher at all and you're just filling things out and trying to figure it out, you're prone to make a lot of mistakes. And that could be okay. But as someone who went through all of that, when you come in and if you're taking lessons with me, what I want to do is eliminate all the dead-end paths. I want you to have a challenge. I want you to have this trial and error type of approach as well, because I want you to understand why something works or doesn't work. But I don't want you to go down this path that makes no sense, that's a dead end. So when you come in and you take lessons with me or any other instructor that's really trying to push, what we want is for you to be in an optimal learning situation and to get as much as you can and assign things to you that are going to put you on the edge of your ability and to push you to grow as a musician and a guitarist. When you take lessons and then you venture off, and let's say you take one private lesson a week, over that course of the week, you don't work on any of the material, but then you go off and you look up videos on what so-and-so here says and what so-and-so here says. And then you start to take that approach. And then you work a little here and you're kind of dabbling, like in the last mistake that I just mentioned. You're going from topic to topic. You're doing whatever you want to do. Well, that's great that you're taking time to do it. But you should prioritize the things that your instructor gave you because there's a reason for it. And then once you do that, if you want to investigate some things, go for it. Take on, little side learning project and work on some things. Great. But don't let it override the whole reason that you're signed up for lessons. Don't make that mistake. All right, so this next mistake that I see, it, again, kind of ties back in to the previous. There are students, and this is just people in general. This happens with any topic, but there are students that once they learn a little bit and they look up a little bit, especially with the technology the way it is today, they look up a little bit, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're the pro, they're the master, they understand it, and they actually come into lessons. And yes, I'm focusing some of these things on, again, my experience, teaching. These are the things that I saw when teaching a lot of private students, is that they come back in, they've taken lessons for a little bit, but all of a sudden they feel like they're the expert and they know things. And when you try to tell them something, they argue with you about it. And it's okay to challenge some things. If you don't understand why a certain thing is being assigned to you while you're working on it, ask questions. Challenge those things to learn, to understand. But when there's an arrogance and a defiant approach to it, and you're trying to tell the instructor that you don't think that that's right, or that's not how so-and-so said it, that becomes a big issue. Because now what happens is that you're not in a growth mindset. You have closed it all down. You are not humble in any way at all. So when you don't approach the situation as someone that is in a learning mindset and you're open and trying to improve, and you've automatically closed that door and said, I'm the expert, I know, I've looked up a few videos, I don't care that you've been playing 20-some years and doing this and gigging and doing all this, I know more than you, then you have trapped yourself into a very, very small box. And that makes it incredibly difficult for people to try to work with you, to teach you, but also that will carry over most likely into people wanting to even try to play any music with you. Because if that's your mindset there, then that means your mindset most likely when you get into an opportunity to perform with people or play with people, you're going to try to tell everybody else how it is and that you know and they don't know because you've looked up some videos and you've played for a few months. That's a big mistake. You don't want to make that mistake. You want to keep the mind open. You want to be in a growth mindset and try to take on as much as you can. There are some things out there, especially when it's unfiltered and you have access to whatever you want, that is crap. It is not correct. And there are some instructors that will teach things, yes, that are not correct. They might be doing it as a hobby and trying to make some extra money on the side. But at least speaking from my personal experience with it, from my point of view, is that I want to work with you to get you to learn. But as soon as you come in and you close your mind and you think you know more than what I'm trying to tell you and you've barely scratched the surface, then that's a huge mistake. And again, you're putting yourself in a box. The fifth and final mistake that I'm going to discuss today is not listening to music. I can't even tell you how many students that I've had, people just starting to play, that do not, or they at least claim that they do not listen to music. If you ask them, why do you want to play? The answer is usually, I don't know. Some of them have said parents want them to do it, but the answer is, I don't know. And, in those situations, it's a bit unfortunate. But there are students that do want to learn on their own, and they still do not listen to music. When you're playing an instrument, you can get obsessed with the technical side of an instrument. I can give you finger exercises. I can give you things to work on that are very mechanical. And I've obsessed on things like that. In the beginning, when I had no idea what I was doing, finger exercises, I didn't know, but it was something enjoyable to me. Turn on a metronome, play some finger exercises, watch the hands line up. That was something that just kept that motivation going for me to keep wanting to play the guitar. That's one facet of it. The other was I was listening to Metallica and Megadeth and Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Dream Theater, Pantera, the list goes on. I was also playing along with songs to whatever capability I was able to do it. But going back, you can get into the mechanics of it and you can obsess and not listen to music at all. But what is the reason then? If it's all about just mechanics, okay, I mean, if you're really into it and you just want to do that kind of stuff, okay, there's tons of exercises and things that you can do. But if you're not applying anything, if you're not really learning any music and listening and trying to expand and express yourself in this language of music, it becomes really redundant. And I would assume that if someone did take that approach, it would just be like hitting a brick wall at some point. They would want to stop. So the big mistake of not listening is just a massive one to me. And it's one that I've thought about so many times that even when someone starting off is taking lessons for an extended period of time, that they still don't listen to music, that they just openly say, nope, don't listen to anything. Even if I try to encourage it and push it, it's still, nope, don't listen to anything. So it's with me, studying with me, that they'll actually hear the music and listen to music, and we play with music. And I can tell you, again, my experience with this is that when they're in the lesson and you're playing along with songs, you can see that there's some enjoyment happening there. You can see little smiles. You can see things starting to click, and they're like, oh, wow, this is cool. I like doing this. It sounds like something. And if they actually do play the songs at home, like even if they're not listening to the music, but they just play it, then the parents are like, and of course I'm talking about the kids, the parents are like, wow, they're playing music. It sounds like a song. That makes them feel good. Adults feel the same thing too. They feel the same thing too when things start to click and they have maybe a family member tell them, hey, that's starting to sound good. You're starting to sound like you know what you're doing. But by listening to music, that's putting you into a mindset to be able to understand, to hear it, to absorb it, and then apply it to the instrument. So again, don't make the mistake of not listening to music. Listen. You can listen to as many different genres as you want. If there's a particular one that you want to focus in on, just do it. Just do it. But you got to be listening. Don't make the mistake of just picking up the instrument just for the fact of doing it. Actually take time to listen. Because a lot of that listening, in some respects, outweighs the practicing of all the other stuff. You got to be listening to the music. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there's many topics that can be mentioned on the like mistakes that I've seen, but I kept it to this list of 5. And, I'm sure that you listening to this, watching this, that you could come up with a list all your own too. And I'm interested to see what that list is. So make sure to leave a comment below. Tell me some of the mistakes that either you've made or that you've experienced other beginning guitar players make that maybe you've taught over the years. Really interested to see that list because I'm sure that we can, relate on those mistakes that have happened over the years that we've seen. Hopefully you found some value in this. Don't forget to share it with others. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and I'll catch you next time.